Maria Santos was driving home from her second job when she saw him, a 17-year-old boy standing by the highway with his thumb out and desperation in his eyes. She had every reason to drive past. A single mother with barely enough money for gas shouldn't pick up strangers, but something made her pull over. That teenager would talk about his dreams of becoming an architect, sketching buildings on napkins while she bought him dinner with her last $20. 12 years later, Marie was about to lose the rundown apartment she called home when a knock came at her door. The man standing there wasn't the scared kid she remembered. He was wearing an expensive suit and holding blueprints, but his eyes were the same. What he was about to offer would leave Maria speechless and prove that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button for more real, emotional, life-changing stories like this, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The rain hammered against Maria's windshield with such intensity that her worn wipers could barely keep up, creating streaks across the glass that made driving treacherous. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday in October, and she was making the 40-minute drive home from her cleaning job at the downtown office complex. Her back ached from hours of scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans, her hands were raw from industrial cleaning chemicals, and her eyelids felt heavy with exhaustion. At 34, Maria Santos felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, juggling 2 jobs just to keep a roof over her and her 8-year-old daughter Isabella's heads. The old Honda Civic sputtered as she pressed the gas pedal, a concerning sound that had been getting worse over the past few weeks. She couldn't afford to have it looked at by a mechanic, let alone fixed, so she whispered a silent prayer every time she turned the key. Tonight, like every night, she calculated expenses in her head while she drove. Rent was due in 5 days. Isabella needed new school shoes, and the electricity bill was already overdue. The math never worked out in her favor, no matter how many times she ran the numbers. That's when she saw him. A figure stood hunched against the rain beside the highway, thumb extended toward the sparse late-night traffic. As her headlights swept across him, Maria could see he was young, maybe a teenager, soaked to the bone and shivering. His clothes looked thin and inadequate for the weather, and he carried what appeared to be a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Most people would have driven right past, especially a woman alone at this hour, but Maria felt something tug at her heart. Maybe it was the way he stood there, not aggressive or demanding, just hopeful. Maybe it was because she knew what it felt like to be desperate and alone. Against every logical instinct screaming in her head, Maria pulled over. The boy approached the passenger window cautiously, and when she rolled it down, rain immediately began pelting the interior of her car. Up close, she could see he was indeed young, probably 17 or 18, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and eyes that held a mixture of gratitude and wariness. He was Hispanic, with features that reminded her of her younger brother, and despite his bedraggled appearance, there was something about his demeanor that seemed trustworthy. "Thank you so much for stopping," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "I know it's late and this probably looks crazy, but I really need to get to the city. I can pay for gas." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. Maria looked at the soggy money and felt her heart clench. $5 wouldn't buy enough gas to get halfway to where she was going, but she could see this kid had nothing else. "Put that away," she said, unlocking the passenger door. "Get in before you catch pneumonia." The boy slid into the seat, immediately apologizing for dripping water everywhere. "I'm really sorry about your car. I'm Diego Ramirez. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I've been standing out there for 3 hours. Maria Santos," she replied, pulling back onto the highway. 3 hours? In this weather? What are you doing out here? Diego stripped off his wet jacket and tried to wring some of the water from his shirt. "I was staying with some friends in Millfield, but things didn't work out, I need to get back to the city to find work. I aged out of foster care 6 months ago and have been trying to make it on my own." His voice carried a maturity that seemed beyond his years, tinged with the kind of weariness that comes from having to grow up too fast. Maria glanced at him in the dim light from the dashboard. She recognized something in his story, the struggle of trying to survive when the odds were stacked against you. "Foster care?" she asked gently. "Yeah, been in the system since I was 12. My parents died in a car accident, and I didn't have any other family who could take me in. I've been in 7 different homes since then. Some were okay, some weren't." Diego's matter-of-fact tone didn't hide the pain underneath. "But I'm 18 now, so I'm on my own. Which is fine. I prefer it that way." The defiance in his voice reminded Maria of herself at that age, determined to prove she could handle anything life threw at her. She'd been 16 when she became pregnant with Isabella, and the father had disappeared the moment he found out. Her own parents had been disappointed and offered little support, so she'd learned early what it meant to rely on herself. "Where are you planning to stay tonight?" she asked. Diego was quiet for a moment. "I'll figure something out. Maybe find a shelter that's still open, or wait until morning at a bus station. I've done it before." Something in his resigned acceptance of homelessness struck Maria deeply. Here was a kid, barely an adult, facing the kind of uncertainty she wouldn't wish on anyone. She found herself asking, "Have you eaten today?" The pause before his answer told her everything she needed to know. "I had some vending machine crackers this morning." Without consciously making the decision, Maria took the exit toward the all-night diner she sometimes stopped at when her late shift left her too wired to sleep. "We're making a detour," she announced. "Oh, you don't need to do that," Diego protested. "You've already done more than enough just giving me a ride. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. I haven't eaten either, and I could use some coffee before I drive the rest of the way home." It wasn't entirely true. She'd had a granola bar for dinner at work, but she could see Diego was embarrassed about his situation and didn't want to make it worse by making his hunger the focus. The Starlight Diner sat like a beacon in the storm, its neon sign flickering but providing a warm glow against the darkness. Inside, the yellow fluorescent lighting was harsh but welcoming, and the smell of coffee and bacon made Maria's stomach rumble despite herself. They slid into a red vinyl booth near the back, and Diego immediately began studying the menu with the intensity of someone calculating every dollar. "Order whatever you want," Maria said, though she was mentally tallying her own wallet contents. She had $23, money she'd planned to put toward Isabella's lunch account at school, but looking at Diego's hollow cheeks, she knew her daughter would understand. "Are you sure? I can just get coffee or something small." "Diego, when's the last time you had a real meal?" He considered this question seriously. "A real meal? Maybe 4 days ago. A church was serving lunch, and I helped them clean up afterward in exchange for seconds." Maria's heart broke a little more. "Then you're getting a real meal tonight. Waitress." She flagged down the tired-looking woman behind the counter. Diego ordered carefully, choosing the least expensive entree on the menu despite Maria's encouragement to get whatever looked good. He settled on a cheeseburger and fries, while Maria ordered coffee and toast, claiming she wasn't very hungry. When the food arrived, she watched Diego try to eat slowly, with dignity, even though it was clear he was ravenous. "So tell me about yourself," Maria said, sipping her coffee. "Besides needing to get to the city, what are your plans?" Diego swallowed a bite of burger and his eyes lit up for the first time since she'd picked him up. "I want to be an architect. I know it sounds crazy, a foster kid with no money talking about going to college. But I've always been good at math, and I love designing things. When I was in different homes, I used to sketch floor plans of houses I'd want to live in someday. Better layouts, more efficient use of space, ways to make small places feel bigger." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a composition notebook. its cover warped from the rain but still intact. As he flipped through pages, Maria could see they were covered with detailed drawings, floor plans, elevation sketches, and notes written in careful handwriting. The talent was obvious even to her untrained eye. "These are incredible," she said, genuinely amazed. "You do all of these?" "Yeah, whenever I had free time. I've been working on this one design for months." He turned to a page that showed a small house, maybe 900 square feet, but the layout was ingenious. Every inch of space was utilized, with built-in storage, multi-purpose rooms, and clever architectural details that would make the home feel much larger than its footprint. "It's for a single mother, someone who needs something affordable but still beautiful." See, the kitchen island doubles as a homework station, and there's a reading nook tucked under the stairs that could be a quiet place for a kid to study. Maria studied the drawing more closely, noting the care with which he'd considered every detail. "This is for a specific person?" Diego's cheeks reddened slightly. "Not really, just a theoretical client. But I've been thinking about how expensive housing is, especially for families who are just getting by. There should be beautiful homes that don't cost a fortune. Architecture shouldn't just be for rich people." The passion in his voice was unmistakable, and Maria found herself believing that this kid might actually achieve his dreams despite the odds against him. "Have you looked into college programs?" I've researched everything. The state university has a good architecture program, and I could probably get financial aid since I aged out of foster care. But I need to establish residency first, find a job, save money for application fees and supplies. It's a lot of steps before I can even think about starting school." They talked for another hour while Diego slowly worked through his meal, savoring every bite. He told her about the different foster homes. Some families who'd treated him like an inconvenience and others who'd been kind but overwhelmed by their own problems. He talked about teachers who'd encouraged his interest in design and others who'd written him off as just another system kid. Maria found herself sharing more than she'd intended. Telling him about Isabella, about the challenge of raising a daughter alone, about her own dreams that had been put on hold when life got in the way. "What did you want to be?" Diego asked. "Before you became a mom, I mean." Maria smiled, remembering a version of herself that felt like a different person. "A teacher. I was going to get my degree in elementary education. Work with kids." I love seeing that moment when something clicks for them, when they understand a concept they've been struggling with. But Isabella came along, and priorities changed. I don't regret it for a second. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd finished school first. "It's not too late," Diego said with the certainty of youth. "My last foster mom went back to school when she was 40. Became a nurse. She said it was harder than doing it when she was younger, but also more meaningful because she knew exactly why she wanted to do it." When it came time to pay the check, Maria laid her $20 bill on the table, leaving her with $3 to her name until her next paycheck. Diego noticed and immediately looked stricken. "You didn't have to spend your money on me. I feel terrible that you're paying for this." "Don't feel terrible. Sometimes we help each other out. That's how the world should work." She meant it, even as she mentally rearranged her budget for the rest of the week. Back in the car, Diego seemed more relaxed. The food and warmth having restored some energy to his demeanor, he gave Maria directions to a bus station downtown where he said he could wait safely until morning. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, making driving dull. "Easier." And they settled into comfortable conversation. "Can I ask you something?" Diego said as they neared the city. "Why did you stop for me tonight?" Most people wouldn't have, especially not a woman driving alone. Maria considered the question. "Honestly, I don't know. Something about you seemed... I guess you reminded me that we're all just trying to get by, And sometimes the difference between making it and not making it is whether someone else is willing to help. I've been in situations where I needed help and I was lucky enough to get it. Maybe this is me paying it forward. Well, I won't forget it. When I'm a successful architect someday, I'm going to remember the woman who picked me up in the rain and bought me dinner when she probably couldn't afford it. I'll find a way to pay you back, I promise. Maria smiled at his earnestness. You don't owe me anything, Diego. Just promise me you'll keep working toward your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you it's impossible. I promise, he said solemnly, and something in his tone made her believe he meant it. They reached the bus station just after 2 a.m. It was a grim building in a questionable part of downtown. But it was open and well lit, with security guards visible through the windows. Diego gathered his still damp belongings and turned to Maria before getting out of the car. I need you to know something, he said. Tonight could have gone very differently for me. I was starting to think maybe I should give up. Maybe trying to make something of myself was just a fantasy. But you treated me like I mattered, like my dreams were worth something. That changes everything. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. Your dreams are worth something, Diego. You're worth something. Don't ever forget that. He nodded, clearly fighting his own emotions. Can I give you my contact information? I mean, I don't have a permanent address yet, but I have an email. I'd like to stay in touch. Let you know how things go. They exchanged information, Diego carefully writing her email address in the back of his notebook. Then he was gone, disappearing into the bus station with his backpack and his dreams and a renewed sense of hope that Maria had helped kindle. The drive home seemed longer than usual, and Maria found herself thinking about the young man she'd just met. There had been something special about him, a determination that went beyond mere stubbornness. She believed he would find a way to succeed, though she knew the path wouldn't be easy. By the time she pulled into the cracked driveway of her small apartment complex, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Isabella was still asleep when Maria crept into their tiny two-bedroom apartment. Her daughter's room was barely large enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. But Maria had tried to make it cheerful with hand-painted murals and second-hand furniture she'd refinished herself. Looking at her sleeping child, Maria felt the familiar mixture of overwhelming love and crushing responsibility that defined her existence as a single mother. She had 3 hours before she needed to wake Isabella for school. Then another long day of work ahead of her. But as she finally settled into bed, Maria found herself thinking about Diego's sketches, particularly the one designed for a single mother, the attention to detail. The way he'd considered every aspect of how a family might live in the space suggested an empathy and understanding that would serve him well as an architect. She drifted off to sleep, hoping their paths would cross again someday, curious to see what he would make of himself. Over the following weeks, Maria found herself checking her email more frequently than usual, though she wasn't sure what she expected to hear from Diego. She'd given him her information on impulse, moved by his gratitude and determination, but she didn't really expect him to follow through on staying in touch. Young people made promises easily, especially when they were emotional, and she wouldn't blame him for moving on with his life. Then, 3 weeks after their encounter, she found a message waiting in her inbox. Dear Maria, it began, I hope you remember me. I'm the guy you picked up in the rain 3 weeks ago. I wanted to let you know that I made it to the city safely and I've been working hard to get my life on track. I found a job at a construction company. It's just manual labor, but the pay is decent and I'm learning a lot about how buildings actually get put together. I'm staying in a boarding house that's not great, but it's safe and affordable. More importantly, I met with a counselor at the community college who helped me apply for financial aid. If everything goes through, I can start taking classes in January. I know this might sound weird, but I keep thinking about our conversation that night. You treated me like I was worth investing in, and that's given me strength every day since. I'm attaching a new drawing I did, inspired by something you said about making small spaces feel bigger. Thank you for everything, Diego. The attached image showed a floor plan for a tiny studio apartment, maybe 400 square feet, but Diego had designed it with such clever efficiency that it would feel spacious and functional. There was a Murphy bed that folded into the wall, a kitchen island that served multiple purposes, and built-in storage solutions that maximized every square inch. At the bottom of the drawing, he'd written in neat lettering, "For people starting over who deserve beauty in their lives." Maria printed the email and the floor plan, pinning them to the bulletin board in her kitchen where she kept important reminders and Isabella's artwork. She wrote back immediately, telling Diego how proud she was of his progress and encouraging him to keep working toward his goals. It was the beginning of a correspondence that would continue, sporadically but consistently, for years to come. Diego wrote to her when he started community college, struggling with advanced mathematics but thriving in his design courses. He sent photos of models he'd built, always accompanied by thoughtful explanations of his design choices and how they related to his goal of creating affordable, beautiful housing. Maria wrote back about Isabella's progress in school, her own small victories at work, and always encouraged Diego to keep pushing forward even when things got difficult. When Diego transferred to the State University's architecture program 2 years later, he sent Maria a photo of himself standing in front of the architecture building, beaming with pride. "None of this would have happened without that night you picked me up," he wrote. "I carry your belief in me everywhere I go." The years passed, and their correspondence became less frequent as Diego's studies intensified and Maria's life grew more complicated. Isabella was now a teenager herself, brilliant and driven, but requiring more of Maria's attention as she navigated the challenges of adolescence. Maria had finally managed to get promoted to a supervisor position at one of her cleaning jobs, which meant slightly better pay but also more responsibility and stress. Their apartment complex had changed ownership, and the new landlords were raising rents faster than Maria's income could keep pace. She'd started looking for cheaper housing, but everything in her price range was in worse neighborhoods with schools she didn't want Isabella attending. The math of their finances grew more precarious each month, and Maria often found herself lying awake at night wondering how long she could keep juggling all the pieces of their life. It was during this stressful period that she received an email from Diego that was different from his usual updates. "Maria," it read, "I graduated last month with my architecture degree, and I wanted to share the news with you first. I got a job with a firm that specializes in affordable housing development." Exactly what I always dreamed of doing. But more than that, I want to tell you about a project I've been working on. I never forgot that night in the diner when you showed such interest in my drawings. Especially the house I designed for a single mother. I've spent the last 4 years refining that design, and it's become something really special. I'm attaching the latest version. I hope you're doing well. And I promise I'll visit soon to see you and Isabella in person. I have so much to thank you for. The attachment showed a complete set of architectural plans for a small house, maybe 1,000 square feet, but the design was breathtaking in its efficiency and beauty. Every detail had been considered, from the placement of windows to maximize natural light, to the inclusion of a small home office space that could double as a homework area. The kitchen flowed seamlessly into the living area, creating a sense of openness, while clever storage solutions were built into every room. It was clearly the work of a skilled architect, not the desperate teenager she'd met years ago. Maria stared at the plans for a long time, marveling at how far Diego had come. The scared kid who'd stood in the rain had grown into someone who could create homes that would shelter and nurture families. She felt a deep sense of pride, knowing she'd played a small part in his journey. 3 months later, Maria's world shifted dramatically when Isabella came home from school with a letter from the guidance counselor. Her daughter had been accepted into a prestigious summer program for gifted students, full tuition paid, but it required a $500 deposit for housing and materials that was due within 2 weeks. It was an incredible opportunity, one that could change Isabella's future, but Maria simply didn't have the money. She'd applied for every loan and credit card she could think of, but her credit score, damaged by years of living paycheck to paycheck, meant she was turned down everywhere. The deposit deadline loomed, and Maria found herself considering desperate measures, maybe pawning the few pieces of jewelry she'd inherited from her grandmother, or asking for an advance on her paycheck that she knew her clockered. Employer wouldn't approve. It was during this crisis that the knock came at her door. Maria was sorting through bills at her kitchen table, trying once again to find money that simply didn't exist, when she heard 3 firm raps on her front door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and unexpected visitors in her neighborhood were rarely good news. Through the peephole, she could see a man in an expensive-looking suit, well-groomed and professional, holding what appeared to be a large folder or portfolio. Her first instinct was that this was some kind of official business, maybe someone from the apartment complex, or worse, a debt collector. She almost didn't answer, but something about the man's posture seemed familiar. When she opened the door, leaving the chain latch connected, she found herself looking into eyes she recognized, even though the face had matured significantly. "Maria?" the man said, his voice deeper than she remembered but carrying the same warmth. "It's Diego Ramirez. I hope I'm not disturbing you." For a moment, Maria couldn't speak. The skinny teenager she'd picked up in the rain had grown into a confident, successful-looking man. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe he just carried himself differently now. His dark hair was professionally styled, and he wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Maria made in a month. But his eyes were the same, kind and intelligent, and his smile held the same genuine warmth that had made her trust him all those years ago. "Diego?" she said, fumbling with the chain latch. "Oh my God, I can't believe it's really you." "It's really me," he said, stepping into her small living room and looking around with obvious emotion. "You haven't changed a bit." Maria was suddenly conscious of her surroundings, the worn furniture and peeling paint, the stack of unpaid bills on her table. She was wearing her work clothes, and she hadn't expected company, but Diego seemed oblivious to any of that. He was looking at her with such genuine affection that she felt tears pricking her eyes. "I can't believe you're here," she said. "You look so successful, so professional. I'm so proud of you, Diego." "I couldn't have done any of it without you," he replied seriously. "But we'll get to that. First, I need to ask you something important. Are you happy living here?" The question caught her off guard. "Happy? I mean, it's home. Isabella and I make it work. Why do you ask?" Diego set his portfolio down on her coffee table and looked around the apartment again, this time with what she realized was a professional eye. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately, especially since I started working. I remember you telling me about your dreams of being a teacher, and I wondered if you ever went back to school." Maria felt a familiar pang of regret. Life got in the way. Isabella needed me to be focused on providing for her, and there never seemed to be time or money for my own dreams. Maybe someday, when she's older. What if someday could be sooner than you think? Diego asked, opening his portfolio. "Maria, I want to show you something, and then I want to make you an offer that's going to sound crazy." He pulled out the architectural drawings she'd seen in his email, but these were different, more detailed and professional. As he spread them across her coffee table, she could see they were complete construction documents, the kind of plans that would actually be used to build a house. "Remember the design I showed you in the diner that night? The house for a single mother? I never stopped working on it, and it's become something really special. But more than that, I've been saving money for years, waiting for the right moment and the right person." He looked at her intently. "Maria, I want to build this house for you and Isabella." Maria stared at him, certain she'd misunderstood. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to build you a house. This house." He pointed to the plans. "I've already found the perfect lot, in a good neighborhood with excellent schools." The design is completely customized for your needs. A single mother raising a brilliant daughter who deserves every opportunity. I've thought through every detail, from the homework station in the kitchen to the reading nook where Isabella can study quietly. There's even a small office space where you could work on getting your teaching degree if you wanted to go back to school. Maria felt like the room was spinning. "Diego, I don't understand. You can't just build someone a house. Houses cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could never afford to pay you back." "You're not supposed to pay me back," Diego said gently. "This is me paying you back. Do you remember what you told me that night? You said sometimes we help each other out. That's how the world should work. You helped me when I had nothing, when everyone else drove past and left me standing in the rain. You spent money you didn't have to feed me. You listened to my dreams when you had every reason to think I was just another hopeless kid. You treated me like I mattered." "But Diego, that was just basic human decency." "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, they wouldn't have," he said firmly. "I stood on that highway for 3 hours before you stopped. Dozens of cars drove past, and most of the drivers wouldn't even look at me. You were different. You saw me as a person worth helping, and that changed everything about how I saw myself." Maria looked at the architectural plans, trying to process what he was offering. The house was beautiful, designed with obvious love and attention to every detail that would matter to a family, but it seemed impossible, too good to be true. "I can't accept something like this," she protested. "It's too much. Too expensive. What about your own life? Don't you want to buy your own house, start your own family?" Diego smiled. "I am starting my own family, in a way. Maria, you and Isabella have been like family to me for years. Your emails got me through some of the hardest parts of college. Knowing that someone believed in me, someone I respected and cared about, kept me going when I wanted to give up. This isn't charity. It's an investment in the people who invested in me first." He pulled out another set of documents, and Maria could see they were legal papers of some kind. "I've already spoken with lawyers and contractors. The lot is purchased, the permits are in process, and I have financing lined up for the construction. All I need is your permission to move forward." Maria sat down heavily on her couch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was proposing. "I don't know what to say. This is incredible, but it's also terrifying. What if something goes wrong? What if you change your mind?" "I'm not going to change my mind," Diego said, sitting down beside her. "Maria, I've been planning this for 2 years. I've saved every extra dollar, worked overtime, taken on side projects, all so I could make this happen. This isn't an impulse decision. It's the fulfillment of a promise I made to myself that night in the diner. I told you I'd find a way to pay you back, and this is how." "But what about Isabella?" "She's 17 now. She'll be going to college soon." "Is it worth it to uproot our lives for just a year or two?" "That's exactly why it's worth it," Diego replied. "Isabella is brilliant. I can tell from everything you've written about her over the years. She deserves to spend her senior year of high school in a good district, with teachers who can challenge her and resources that will help her get into a great college. And you deserve to have a stable, beautiful home where you can focus on your own dreams for once, instead of just surviving." As if summoned by their conversation, the front door opened and Isabella walked in. backpack slung over her shoulder and earbuds around her neck. She stopped short when she saw Diego, clearly not expecting to find a strange man in their living room. "Mom," she said cautiously. "Isabella, come here. I want you to meet someone very important." Maria stood up, her mind still reeling from Diego's offer. "This is Diego Ramirez, the young man I told you about." "The one I picked up in the rain when you were little." Isabella's eyes widened with recognition. "The architect? The one who sends you drawings sometimes?" "That's me," Diego said, standing and extending his hand. "You must be Isabella. I've heard so much about you over the years. Your mom is incredibly proud of you." Isabella shook his hand, studying him with the directness of a teenager who'd learned to be protective of her mother. "What are you doing here?" Diego glanced at Maria, who nodded for him to continue. "I'm here to make your mom an offer. I want to build you both a house." "Like a real house? Not an apartment? A real house. Would you like to see the plans?" For the next hour, Diego spread the architectural drawings across their kitchen table and walked Isabella through every detail of the design. Maria watched her daughter's eyes light up as she saw the built-in desk in what would be her bedroom. The large windows that would fill the space with natural light, the modern kitchen where she could actually help cook family meals. "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen," Isabella said, running her finger along the floor plan. "You really designed this yourself?" "I did, but I had help. Your mom gave me the inspiration for it years ago when she told me about raising you in a small space and making it work. I wanted to create something that would give a family room to grow and dream." Isabella looked at her mother, then back at Diego. "And you want to build this for us?" "For free?" "Not for free," Diego corrected. "In exchange for your mom changing my life when I needed it most. She taught me that kindness matters, that everyone deserves a chance to succeed. This is me paying that forward." That evening, after Diego had left with promises to call in a few days for their answer, Maria and Isabella sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by the architectural plans. Isabella kept returning to the drawings, pointing out details and asking questions about how everything would work. "Mom, this is incredible," she said for the 10th time. "I mean, our own house? With a yard and everything?" Maria nodded, still struggling to believe it was real. "It is incredible. Almost too incredible. Part of me keeps waiting for there to be a catch. Some reason why it's too good to be true. What kind of catch? I don't know. Maybe he'll want us to pay him back eventually, or maybe there will be strings attached that we don't know about yet. People don't just build houses for other people." Isabella considered this seriously. "But Mom, think about what you always tell me. You say that good things happen to good people, and that when we put kindness out into the world, it comes back to us. Maybe this is your kindness coming back." That night, Maria lay awake thinking about Diego's offer and everything it would mean. The house he'd designed wasn't just shelter. It was a foundation for the life she'd always dreamed of giving Isabella, in a good neighborhood with excellent schools. Isabella would have opportunities that seemed impossible from their current situation, and the home office Diego had included in the design seemed like a sign. A suggestion that maybe it wasn't too late for Maria to pursue her own dreams of becoming a teacher, but accepting such an enormous gift felt overwhelming. She'd spent Isabella's entire life being fiercely Cain. Independent, working multiple jobs and sacrificing her own needs to provide for her daughter. The idea of depending on someone else's generosity, even someone as special as Diego, went against every instinct she'd developed as a single mother. The next morning brought another crisis that helped put things in perspective. Maria found an eviction notice taped to her door, giving her 30 days to pay 3 months of back rent or vacate the apartment. She'd been juggling bills for so long that she'd fallen behind on the rent without realizing how serious the situation had become. sitting in her kitchen with the legal notice in her hands. Maria realized that pride might be a luxury she could no longer afford. When Diego called that afternoon to check on their decision, Maria's voice was shaky with stress and gratitude. "If you're serious about this offer, if you really want to build us a house, then yes. Yes, we accept." The joy in Diego's voice was unmistakable. "You've just made me the happiest architect in the world. I promise you won't regret this decision. I'm going to build you something beautiful." The next 6 months passed in a blur of activity and anticipation. Diego insisted that Maria and Isabella be involved in every decision, from choosing paint colors to selecting fixtures. He walked them through the construction site weekly, explaining each phase of the building process and asking for their input on everything from the placement of electrical outlets to the height of kitchen counters. Maria found herself amazed by Diego's attention to detail and his insistence on quality materials, despite the fact that he was paying for everything himself. When she questioned whether certain upgrades were necessary, he would smile and remind her that this house was being built to last, to be a place where her family could grow and thrive for decades to come. "I'm not cutting corners on this," he told her one afternoon, as they stood in what would become Isabella's bedroom. "This house represents everything I believe about architecture, that beautiful, well-built homes shouldn't be luxuries for the wealthy. Everyone deserves to live somewhere that makes them feel proud and safe and inspired." Isabella threw herself into the project with teenage enthusiasm, researching design ideas and creating mood boards for her room. She'd been accepted into 3 different colleges, including one with a substantial scholarship that would make her education affordable. And Maria could see how the stability of knowing they had a real home was affecting her daughter's confidence and outlook. "I never realized how much mental energy I was spending on worrying about where we were going to live," Isabella confided to her mother one evening as they looked through paint samples. "Now I can focus on school and my future instead of wondering if we'll be able to afford rent next month." The house took shape throughout the spring, and Maria watched in wonder as Diego's architectural drawings became reality. The efficiency of the design was even more impressive in 3 dimensions, with every room feeling larger than its actual square footage suggested. The kitchen flowed seamlessly into the living area, creating a sense of openness and connection that their cramped apartment had never provided. Isabella's room included the built-in desk and storage solutions that would make studying a pleasure rather than a challenge. But it was the small touches that really moved Maria, details that proved Diego had been listening to every conversation they'd had over the years. The mudroom near the front entrance included hooks and storage for work uniforms and school bags. The laundry room was positioned conveniently between the bedrooms, with a folding station that would make the endless cycle of washing and sorting clothes more manageable. The back porch was designed to catch the morning sun, creating a peaceful spot where Maria could drink her coffee before starting each day. As the construction neared completion, Diego surprised them with one final addition that wasn't on the original plans. In the small home office he'd designed for Maria, he'd had built-in bookshelves installed along one wall, ready to hold the textbooks and resources she'd need if she decided to go back to school for her teaching degree. "I thought you might need somewhere to keep your education materials," he said with a grin when he showed her the finished space. "This room is designed to be your headquarters for changing your life." The day they moved in was one of the most emotional of Maria's life. After years of living in cramped, temporary spaces that never felt like home, she found herself walking through rooms that had been designed specifically for her family's needs. Isabella ran from room to room, claiming spaces and making plans, her excitement infectious and heartwarming. That evening, as they sat in their new living room eating takeout pizza from actual plates instead of paper ones, Maria felt a sense of peace and security she hadn't experienced in years. The house was more than just shelter. It was a foundation for the future, a place where dreams could take root and grow. "Diego," she said, looking around at the beautiful space he'd created for them, "I need you to know that this isn't just a house to us. It's hope. It's the chance for Isabella to focus on her education without worrying about whether we'll have a roof over our head. Heads. It's the possibility for me to pursue my own dreams without feeling guilty about taking time and resources away from providing for my daughter. You've given us more than a home. You've given us a future. Diego's eyes were bright with emotion as he responded. That night 12 years ago, when you pulled over in the rain, you didn't just give me a ride. You gave me proof that I mattered, that my dreams were worth pursuing. You invested in a scared kid with nothing but ambition, and look what grew from that investment. This house is just the interest on a debt I can never fully repay. Over the following months, Maria settled into their new life with a sense of wonder that never fully faded. Isabella thrived in her new school district, making friends and excelling in advanced placement courses that would give her college credit. The guidance counselors were impressed with her academic record and helped her apply for additional scholarships that would make her college education even more affordable. For Maria, the stability of homeownership created space for dreams she'd put aside for so long. She enrolled in night classes at the community college, working toward the prerequisites she'd need to apply for the state university's teacher certification program. The home office Diego had designed became her study sanctuary, a quiet place where she could focus on coursework without disturbing Isabella or being distracted by household activities. The process of returning to school at 36 was challenging, but exhilarating. Maria discovered that her years of experience as a mother and worker had given her perspectives that enhanced her understanding of education and child development. Her professors were impressed with the maturity and insight she brought to class discussions, and she found herself excelling in ways she hadn't expected. Diego remained in touch throughout this transition, visiting regularly and taking obvious pride in how Maria and Isabella were flourishing in their new environment. He'd been promoted at his architecture firm and was working on a series of affordable housing projects that were gaining attention from city planners and social advocates. The house he'd built for Maria had become something of a showcase for his philosophy of accessible, beautiful design, and he brought potential clients by occasionally to demonstrate how thoughtful architecture could transform lives. "You've become my best advertisement," he told Maria with a laugh one afternoon as they watched Isabella and her new friends playing in the backyard. "Would I show people what's possible when we design homes for real families instead of just trying to maximize square footage or impress neighbors? This house is my proof of concept." Isabella's senior year passed in a blur of college applications, scholarship interviews, and the normal teenage milestones that Maria was finally able to enjoy without the underlying stress of financial insecurity. When the acceptance letters started arriving, they had multiple excellent options to choose from, including a full scholarship to the state university's honors program. "I want to study environmental engineering," Isabella announced one evening over dinner in their bright, airy kitchen. "I want to work on sustainable building design, maybe even collaborate with architects like Diego to create homes that are beautiful and environmentally responsible." Diego, who'd joined them for dinner that night, beamed with pride. The world needs more engineers who understand that sustainability and beauty aren't mutually exclusive. If you're serious about that path, I know some professors at the university who would love to mentor a student with your passion and intelligence. As Isabella prepared to leave for college, Maria found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The scared, exhausted single mother who'd picked up a hitchhiking teenager 12 years earlier had evolved into a confident woman pursuing her own education in James. The cramped apartment that had barely contained their ambitions had been replaced by a home that seemed to expand with their growing aspirations. On Isabella's last night before leaving for college, mother and daughter sat on the back porch Diego had designed for morning coffee, watching the sunset and talking about the future. Isabella was excited about her studies and the possibilities ahead, but also reflective about how dramatically their lives had changed. "Mom, do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped for Diego that night?" she asked. Maria considered the question seriously. I think about it sometimes. We might still be in that apartment, struggling with the same problems month after month. You might not have had the opportunities you've had this year. I definitely wouldn't be going back to school. But more than that, I think we both would have missed out on understanding how powerful it can be when people invest in each other's dreams. What do you mean? I mean that helping Diego wasn't just about giving him a ride or buying him dinner. It was about seeing potential in someone when they couldn't see it in themselves, and believing in their dreams when everyone else was walking past. But the amazing thing is that he did the same thing for us. He saw potential in our lives that we couldn't see, and he invested in our dreams when we thought they were impossible. Isabella nodded thoughtfully. So it's like a circle. Your kindness to him grew into his success, and his success grew into opportunities for us, and now our opportunities can grow into something that helps other people. Exactly. That's what Diego meant when he said this wasn't charity, it was an investment. He wasn't just building us a house, he was creating a foundation for dreams that will ripple out and affect other people's lives. The next morning, as they loaded Isabella's belongings into the car for the drive to campus, Diego arrived with a gift. It was a framed copy of the original sketch he'd drawn that night in the diner 12 years earlier, the rough floor plan for a house designed for a single mother. Next to it, he'd mounted a photograph of the completed house where Maria and Isabella now lived. I want you to take this to college with you, he told Isabella, as a reminder that dreams can become reality when people believe in each other. And I want you to remember that this house isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning. The foundation we've built here is meant to support whatever you want to build on top of it. After dropping Isabella off at college, Maria returned to the house that had transformed her life and found herself experiencing a mixture of emotions. The pride in her daughter's achievements and excitement about her own educational journey were tempered by the natural melancholy of an empty nest. But as she walked through the rooms Diego had designed with such care and attention, she felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete confidence in the future. That fall, Maria was accepted into the teacher certification program at the state university. The admissions committee was impressed with her academic performance in Verge, the prerequisite courses, and her essay about wanting to work with children from challenging backgrounds, her own experience as a struggling single mother, combined with her understanding of how education could transform lives, made her an ideal candidate for the program. Diego celebrated her acceptance with the same enthusiasm he'd shown for every K-8 milestone in their journey. This is exactly what I hoped would happen, he told her over dinner at the restaurant where they'd started meeting monthly to catch up on their respective projects. You're going to be an incredible teacher because you understand what it means to have someone believe in your potential. The teacher certification program was rigorous but rewarding, and Maria found herself excelling in courses on child development, educational psychology, and classroom management. Her professors frequently used her insights as examples during class discussions, and her student teaching placements were overwhelmingly successful. The elementary school where she did her final practicum offered her a position before she'd even graduated from the program. Meanwhile, Diego's career continued to flourish as he gained recognition for his innovative approach to affordable housing design. The house he'd built for Maria had been featured in several architecture magazines as an example of how thoughtful design could maximize both function and beauty in small spaces. He'd used the publicity to launch his own firm, specializing in sustainable, affordable housing for working families and single parents. I want every project to have the same intention behind it that went into your house, he explained to Maria as he showed her plans for a small subdivision of affordable homes he was designing. Beautiful, efficient spaces that give families room to grow and dream. Architecture that serves people instead of just impressing other architects? Isabella thrived in college, maintaining a high GPA while getting involved in environmental advocacy and sustainable design organizations. She spent her summer breaks working internships with engineering firms that specialized in green building practices, gaining experience that would serve her well in her chosen career. Her phone calls home were filled with excitement about her coursework and her plans for graduate school. During Isabella's junior year, she surprised Maria with news that brought their story full circle. Mom, I've been accepted into a study abroad program that focuses on sustainable architecture and engineering. I'll be spending a semester in Costa Rica, working on projects that bring improved housing to rural communities. The professor leading the program said my application essay about how architecture can transform lives was one of the best he'd ever read. That's incredible, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. The thing is, I wrote the essay about our house, about Diego, about how a single act of kindness rippled out to create opportunities for our whole family. I want to take what I've learned and find ways to help other families the way Diego helped us. That conversation stayed with Maria as she completed her first year of teaching, working with children from backgrounds similar to her own. She found herself constantly reminded of how crucial it was for young people to have adults who believed to their potential. She made it a point to identify students who seemed to be struggling with challenges beyond, quote, academics, offering encouragement and support that went beyond traditional teaching responsibilities. One student in particular reminded Maria of Diego, the 10-year-old boy named Carlos, whose family had recently moved to the area after his father lost his job. Carlos was bright and creative, but struggling with the social dynamics of a new school and the stress of his family's financial difficulties. Maria made sure he had access to school supplies and free lunch programs. But more importantly, she consistently communicated her belief in his abilities and potential. Mrs. Santos, Carlos said to her one afternoon as he worked on a project about career aspirations, "Do you really think I could be an engineer like I want to?" "I absolutely think you could be an engineer," Maria replied without hesitation. "But more than that, I think you should dream bigger than just what you want to be. Think about what you want to build, what problems you want to solve, what kind of difference you want to make in the world." By her third year of teaching, Maria had earned a reputation as an educator who could connect with struggling students and help them achieve beyond their expectations. Parents requested her specifically for children who needed extra encouragement, and her principal often assigned her the students other teachers found challenging. Maria loved the work, finding deep satisfaction in the moments when a concept clicked for a student or when she saw confidence building in a child who'd been written off by others. Diego, meanwhile, had expanded his firm and was working on increasingly ambitious projects. His philosophy of beautiful, affordable housing had gained attention from city planners and nonprofit organizations, leading to contracts for large-scale developments that would house hundreds of families. He never forgot to credit Maria's influence on his approach, frequently speaking about how her kindness had shaped his understanding of architecture's social responsibility. "Every building I design starts with a question Maria taught me to ask," he said during a keynote speech at a national architecture conference. "Not how impressive can I make this, but how can this space serve the people? Who will live and work here? How can design choices enhance their daily lives and support their dreams?" Isabella graduated summa cum laude with her engineering degree and was accepted into a prestigious graduate program focused on sustainable infrastructure development. Her thesis project proposed innovative housing solutions for disaster-affected communities, combining rapid construction techniques with environmentally responsible materials and energy-efficient design. Diego served on her thesis committee, offering both professional expertise and the perspective of someone who understood the human impact of thoughtful architecture. "Your daughter's going to change the world," Diego told Maria after Isabella's thesis defense. The combination of technical skill and social consciousness she brings to her work is exactly what the field needs. She's going to help more families than we can even imagine. As Isabella prepared to begin her graduate studies, she made a decision that surprised and moved both Maria and Diego. She asked if she could spend the summer working with Diego's farm, learning about the practical aspects of affordable housing development and gaining experience that would inform her graduate research. I want to understand not just the engineering principles, but the human stories behind the projects. She explained, I want to work on buildings that will matter to the families who live in them, the way our house mattered to us. That summer, Isabella worked alongside Diego on a project that seemed designed by fate. The city had commissioned his firm to design a housing development specifically for single parents and their children, with built-in support services like childcare and educational programs. Isabella's engineering expertise proved invaluable in developing sustainable systems for the buildings, while her personal understanding of single-parent family dynamics informed many of the design decisions. It's like watching the next generation of our story unfold, Maria observed as she toured the construction site with Diego and Isabella. She's taken everything she learned from our experience, and she's using it to create opportunities for other families. The project became a model for similar developments in other cities, with Diego and Isabella co-authoring papers about their collaborative approach to socially conscious architecture and engineering. Isabella's graduate advisor encouraged her to pursue a PhD with a focus on housing policy and sustainable community development. Meanwhile, Maria's teaching career continued to flourish. She'd been promoted to lead teacher for her grade level and was mentoring new educators who wanted to work with at-risk students. The skills she'd developed as a single mother, combined with her formal education and natural empathy, made her exceptionally effective at reaching children who struggled in traditional classroom environments. One afternoon, as Maria was helping Carlos with a particularly challenging math concept, he looked up at her with sudden understanding. Mrs. Santos, you didn't just teach me how to solve this problem. You taught me that I'm smart enough to solve problems I thought were impossible. That comment stayed with Maria as she reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. The scared single mother who'd worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Become an educator who is changing children's lives by believing in their potential. The woman who'd felt like her dreams were permanently on hold had discovered that pursuing those dreams, even later in life, could create ripple effects that extended far beyond her own experience. When Isabella completed her PhD 4 years later, her dissertation focused on developing housing policies that would make homeownership accessible to working families regardless of income level. Her research had been informed by countless interviews with single parents, foster care alumni, and other individuals whose lives had been transformed by stable housing. The acknowledgement section of her dissertation began with a dedication to my mother, who taught me that kindness creates possibilities, and to Diego, who proved that dreams deferred are not dreams denied. The day of Isabella's dissertation defense, Maria sat in the university auditorium watching her daughter present research that could influence housing policy for decades to come. Diego sat beside her, both of them overwhelmed with pride at what Isabella had accomplished, an awareness of how their chance encounter years earlier had set in motion a chain of events that was still creating positive change. After the successful defense, the 3 of them returned to the house Diego had built, the place where so many dreams had taken root and flourished. As they sat on the back porch where Maria and Isabella had once discussed the future, Isabella made an announcement that brought her story full circle. I've been offered a position with a federal housing agency working on policy development for affordable housing initiatives. It's exactly the kind of work I'd been preparing for, and it would let me influence housing decisions on a national level. She paused, looking at both Maria and Diego. But I've also been thinking about something else. What if we started our own organization, combining architecture, engineering, and education to create comprehensive support systems for families transitioning out of poverty. Diego's eyes lit up with interest. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about all the families like ours, who just need someone to believe in their potential and provide the foundation for their dreams." What if we created an organization that doesn't just build houses, but builds futures? We could combine Diego's architecture expertise, my engineering and policy background, and Mom's understanding of education and child development to create something completely new. Maria felt a familiar surge of excitement, the same feeling she'd experienced when Diego first showed her the plans for their house. "You're talking about something that addresses housing, education, and family support all together?" "Exactly. We've learned that stable housing is just the beginning. Families also need educational support, career development, financial literacy, and community connections. What if we created a model that provides all of that in an integrated way?" Over the following months, the three of them developed a comprehensive plan for what they decided to call the Foundation Project. Diego would handle the architectural design of affordable housing developments. Isabella would oversee the engineering and sustainability aspects while also working on policy advocacy. And Maria would develop educational and family support programs that would be integrated into the communities they created. Their first project was a pilot program in partnership with the city and several nonprofit organizations. They designed a small community of 12 houses, each affordable for working families, surrounding a central building that housed childcare facilities, tutoring programs, adult education classes, and community meeting spaces. The architectural design promoted both privacy for individual families and opportunities for neighbors to connect and support each other. The waiting list for the pilot community was overwhelming, with hundreds of families applying for the 12 available homes. Maria developed a selection process that prioritized single parents, foster care alumni, and families transitioning out of homelessness. The populations she knew from experience were most likely to benefit from comprehensive support. The Martinez family was selected as the first residents. A single mother named Elena and her 2 young children who had been living in their car after Elena lost her job due to budget cuts at the nonprofit where she worked. Elena had a college degree in social work but had been unable to find stable employment that paid enough to afford housing in the area. "I can't believe this is real," Elena said as Diego walked her through her new home, explaining the energy-efficient features that would keep utility costs low and pointing out the built-in desk where her children could do homework. "I've been applying for apartments for months, but even the ones I could theoretically afford wouldn't accept my application because my income was too low or my credit wasn't good enough." Maria worked with Elena to develop a plan for rebuilding her career, connecting her with continuing education opportunities and helping her access childcare so she could attend classes and job interviews. The community's integrated support system meant that Elena's children had safe, supervised activities after school while she focused on her professional development. 6 months later, Elena had completed a certification program in nonprofit management and secured a position with a local social services agency. Her children were thriving in school, benefiting from the tutoring programs Maria had developed and the stable home environment Diego had designed. Most importantly, Elena had become a mentor for other families moving into the community, creating the kind of peer support network that strengthened the entire project. "What you've created here isn't just housing," Elena told the 3 founders during a community meeting. "It's hope. It's proof that people like us, families that have faced challenges, can build good lives when we have the right support and opportunities." The success of the pilot project attracted attention from housing advocates, city planners, and federal agencies interested in replicating the model. Isabella found herself testifying before congressional committees about the importance of comprehensive support systems for families transitioning out of poverty. while Diego presented the architectural innovations at conferences focused on sustainable community development. Maria's role evolved as well, as she developed curricula and training programs that could be used to replicate their family support services in other communities. Her background as both an educator and a formerly struggling single parent gave her unique insights into what families needed most during transitions to stability. The key insight, Maria explained during a presentation to other social service providers, is that families don't just need houses, they need homes. And homes aren't just physical structures, they're foundations for dreams. Our job is to create environments where those dreams can take root and grow. 5 years after the pilot project began, the foundation project had expanded to include 6 communities across 3 states. Housing over 200 families and providing comprehensive support services that had helped dozens of parents complete education programs, start careers, and achieve financial stability. The model had been studied by researchers, replicated by other organizations, and influenced federal housing policy in ways that would benefit thousands of additional families. But for Maria, Diego, and Isabella, the most meaningful measure of success wasn't the policy changes, or the research papers, or the national recognition. It was the individual stories of transformation. Families like Elena's who had moved from crisis to stability to prosperity, and children who were growing up with the same sense of possibility that Isabella had experienced in the house Diego built. During a celebration marking the 5th anniversary of the foundation project, Maria found herself standing in the community center of their newest development, watching children play while their parents attended a FASKIN, financial literacy workshop. The scene reminded her of that night 12 years earlier when she'd made the decision to pull over for a stranded teenager, not knowing that moment would set in motion changes that would eventually affect hundreds of lives. Diego joined her, following her gaze to the families they'd helped bring together. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd driven past that night?" he asked, echoing the question Isabella had posed years earlier. Maria smiled, thinking about all the lives that had been touched by their work, all the dreams that had been nurtured in the communities they'd created. "I think about it sometimes, but not with regret. I think about it with gratitude for whatever instinct made me stop. That moment taught me that we never know when a small act of kindness might change everything. Not just for the people we help, but for ourselves and for people we haven't even met yet." "The ripple effect," Diego said, using a phrase that had become central to their organization's philosophy. "Exactly. Your success made Isabella's opportunities possible, which made our work together possible." "Which has created opportunities for hundreds of other families, and those families will raise children who understand the power of investing in each other's dreams, and those children will grow up to create changes we can't even imagine yet." As the celebration continued around them, with families sharing stories of achievement and children playing in spaces designed to nurture their potential, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. The scared single mother picking up a hitchhiker in the rain had evolved into a woman whose work was influencing housing policy at the national level. The desperate teenager with architectural dreams had become a leader in sustainable community development. The 8-year-old girl who'd done homework at a cramped kitchen table had grown into a policy expert whose research was creating opportunities for children across the country. But more than individual achievements, what moved Maria most was the recognition that their story was still being written. Every family that moved into one of their communities brought new dreams and possibilities. Every child who grew up in the supportive environments they'd created would carry forward the understanding that circumstances could be changed and futures could be built. Later that evening, as the 3 founders sat together in Maria's kitchen, the same space where Diego had first spread out architectural plans 12 years earlier, Isabella raised a question that captured the spirit of everything they'd accomplished. "What do you think our next chapter should be?" she asked. Maria looked around the room where so many dreams had been nurtured, where so many plans had been made, where a family had been built not just through biology, but through shared commitment to each other's success. I think our next chapter should be about making sure that every child who grows up in our communities understands that their dreams matter, that their potential is worth investing in, and that they have the power to create change in other people's lives. Diego nodded, already mentally sketching the buildings and programs that could support such a vision. We could develop youth mentorship programs, scholarship funds, entrepreneurship training. We could create pathways for the children in our communities to become the next generation of architects, engineers, teachers, and social innovators. And we could document all of this, Isabella added. Create a blueprint that other communities could use, showing not just how to build affordable housing, but how to build environments where dreams can flourish. We could prove that investing in people's potential isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. As they talked late into the night, developing plans that would extend their impact for generations to come, Maria felt the same sense of possibility she'd experienced that rainy night when she'd decided to stop for a young man who needed help. The difference was that now she understood the true power of that decision, not just to change one life or even 3 lives, but to create a model for how society could function when people invested in each other's dreams. The foundation project continued to grow and evolve, but its core mission remained the same: to prove that everyone deserves a foundation for their dreams, and that when we provide that foundation, the results extend far beyond what we can imagine. It was a lesson that had begun with a single act of kindness on a rainy night, and continued to ripple outward, creating possibilities for families who hadn't even been born yet when Maria first pulled over to help a stranded teenager. Years later, when Maria was asked to speak at conferences about the foundation project's success, she would always begin her presentation the same way. This story starts with a choice to stop when it would have been easier to keep driving. It continues with the understanding that our dreams are connected to each other, that investing in someone else's potential is really investing in our collective future. And it proves that the most powerful architecture isn't about building impressive structures. It's about creating foundations where human potential can flourish. The teenager who had once stood in the rain with nothing but dreams and determination had indeed become a successful architect. But his greatest building wasn't made of wood and steel and concrete. It was made of hope and opportunity and the understanding that when we believe in each other, we create structures that can support infinite possibilities. And the single mother who had pulled over that night had discovered that the most important lesson she could teach wasn't found in any textbook. It was the simple truth that kindness creates more kindness. Dreams nurture other dreams, and the foundation we build for others becomes the foundation for our own unexpected possibilities.